in it. And I haven't seen any, but there maybe are some out there about, what our ancestors went through, like, especially like the boarding school. My grandma used to tell us about it, that she was in boarding school and that she ran away, and had to walk through the woods. And, I don't know if I could ever do that, She left the boarding school, and how they, they cut their hair and couldn't speak their language, It's just kind of heartbreaking when you think about it, how, back in the day, that's all they could talk, and if they couldn't relate in their own language, it would be, I probably would run away too. I did like the singing by Liz Jockala. I just love her voice and her singing and her messages, and her songs. And then I liked the parts too about I never got to go out to the pipeline, North Dakota there, where they.
Standing Rock.
Yeah, Standing Rock. I never got to go there, but I kind of would have liked to go.
Mm-hmm.
Support the people in their endeavor there. Yeah, it's kind of cool how they all come together. Each tribe, they had so many different tribes there, and I think that's so. But that's how Indians are. When push comes to shove, they're right there. There's so many. I don't know. I don't know if I do have a favorite at all, but it was about when they killed Jesus and put him on the cross. That is so Passion of the Christ. That's it, because it's just so heart-wrenching, more than any other movie that I've seen. It's really brings a message of the cross, and so yeah, that's my favorite. I just like going to these things that you have on here. I think you're doing a really good job of bringing people in, and it's kind of sad that we didn't have very many people last night, but it was enjoyable for the ones of us that did go.
Thanks for tuning in to our special series about Native American film. This story was brought to you by the Nett Lake Radio Project and the Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund of Minnesota.
You are listening to KBFT's Boys Fort Veterans Series, a special Veterans Day series featuring stories from the Anishinaabe men and women of the Boys Fort Reservation who served in the United States military.
Ajawe Gamakuk, Indigenous. My name is Diana Goodsky. I am a United States naval veteran. I served in the Navy from 1980 to 1995. I retired as a Navy Chief Petty Officer, which is the rank of E7. And I am a Boys Fort band member, proudly from Nett Lake. I was selected for Navy Chief in 1991 after serving 11 years. It turns out, I didn't find this out till much later, but I am the very first Native American female to make chief in the whole United States Navy. I'm very proud of that, because making chief is a big deal in and of itself. That's a significant career milestone. That's the rank of E7. The highest you can go is E9. So that's significant by itself. But to be the first Native American female chief is even more special to me for this reason. I truly believe that we have the capabilities to serve in the Navy and any military establishment. As Natives, we have natural leadership qualities. We just have so many good qualities that fit in the military. And the military has really good lessons for us to learn and help us be well-rounded and all of that. My dad was in the Navy. He was one of the first to stay beyond his original enlistment. So he'd been in 10 years or something. He first served in Vietnam, and then we went to first Virginia and then Great Lakes. But while we were in Great Lakes, I'm 12 years old, and we did our payday shopping. So we went to the Navy Exchange, and we did our thing, and we were in the car. And as we were getting in the car, just when I was getting in the back seat, I saw this woman. And it was the first time I ever saw a military woman wearing a uniform. And oh my gosh, did she impress me. She had whites on. I think actually they were probably blues, but I couldn't tell. And by the time I joined, we only had whites, but it was very light colored anyway. Not like my dad's CB uniform, very different. And it was a skirt, and I could tell it was a woman. And just the way she carried herself and the way she presented herself, even though she was kind of far off, I could tell that she walked tall, she walked proud, and she looked sharp as all get out. I just knew that, all of that, in her dress and in her mannerism and the way she walked. And I said, that's what I want to be when I grow up. And the reason I love that story is, so I was 12, that's when I knew I wanted to join the Navy. I would love to meet that woman. She has no idea what she did for me. The lesson I want everybody to learn from that, or I hope, is that you don't ever know who's out there watching you, and she didn't say one word to me, but yet she changed my life. So that's powerful. So I always say be very mindful of who could be seeing you and watching you, because you are making an impression, whether you know it or not. But that's why I joined the Navy. I had my dad as the role model. My grandpa was in the Army during, my grandpa Melvin was in the Army during World War II. Long legacy of military in the family. And but I saw that woman, first woman ever, and I was 12 years old. So I went on the USNS Indomitable, and that was out of Hawaii. And we went to the Sea of Japan, and there was the most exciting thing that ever happened over there was there was a Russian trawler that came upon us pretty quick. And Russian trawlers are notorious. They're spy ships. They pretend to be fishing boats, but they're spy ships. So it came upon us very quickly. And the captain of the Indomitable got really mad that they would do that, and then it started following us. And it kept its distance a little bit. But it was fascinating because you knew what they were doing. You knew that they were trying to do all their data collection and try to figure out what we were doing. And we were in the Sea of Japan, but it was international waters where nobody was breaking any rules. And so on the day 2, because the first day when the trawler came towards us, he came fast and he turned away pretty quickly. And then he started following us. But then on day 2, he went out and he came back and it looked like he was going to charge us again. The captain got really mad, and he got on the radio. There was a task force group nearby, which had an aircraft carrier, and so he asked for support. He asked for this task force to do a show of support for us and a show of force for us. And so next thing we know, there's 2 F-18s doing flyovers very close to that Russian trawler. And so we're on the back of this ship going, oh my gosh, it just made you feel so proud to be part of the United States Navy, because, here's these F-14s that are coming in and they're going, shoo, and then sure enough, they scared the Russian trawler away. We're like, bye. So Veterans Day is a day to honor those who have served, those who have chosen to be in service, but more importantly, those who know that they could and would sacrifice their own life for that of others. To the fellow veterans, I want to thank you very much for paving the way and for showing me and everyone else what it's like to join. So because they served ahead of us, they paved the way, and I'm in deep gratitude for that and for their sacrifice.
Thank you for listening to Boys Fort Veteran Series, brought to you by Kbft 89.9 FM and the Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund. You're listening to a series about outdoor activities, from ricing to survival skills from a Boys Fort perspective.
Neb. That's my Indian name, my real name, and my other name is Gene Goodsky, and I'm from Orr.
Did you go out wild ricing as a kid?
Oh yes.
Tell me what was that? What was the first time? When was the first time you went out ricing?
Oh, well, I was about 12 years old when I went out.
Mm-hmm.
I was over at my grandpa's house there, and this guy came in and he says, "I'm looking for a partner." He says, there's nobody around. Then he looked at me and he says, how about you? I said, yeah. Then he asked everybody else. Yeah, he's good. He's a pretty strong paddler. So I went out with him.
What was that like?
Oh, it was good. We got about 200 pounds, something like that, about 4 sacks. And to my surprise, he gave me half. At that time, they had a wild rice plant right outside a village, about a mile out. It was King's wild rice plant. And we'd turn in our rice there, and they bought it right there. So, man, for a 12-year-old, I'd finished out to probably about 70%.
Mm-hmm.
And man, I had the big bucks.
How much was rice then? How much was rice then? Pound.
Probably a pound was about $5, but that was some good,
It's a lot of money.
Yeah, a lot of money. I mean, good wages then.
So you paddled at first, and then I learned from a couple of other people that learning how to be and being the knocker is a really coveted, a very important position. Did you eventually move up the ladder?
Yeah, I did.
How would you say your knocking your skills were in that area?
Good.
Some people say you gotta have a rhythm to it.
Yeah, that's the main thing. Gotta have a rhythm.
What about knowing when the rice is ripe, versus when it's still green?
The green rice is a light colored green, and the ripe rice is a little darker, brownish green.
So when you
would
no, go ahead, finish. Sorry.
And when it's really ripe, then the blades of the grass are starting to die out, and then the leaves on the trees are starting to turn color in the fall, autumn colors. So that's how we knew when. What
was one year harvest that you remember that was really good or just really memorable?
It was all good back in the day.
What's back in the day? Tell me.
Well, when I was probably about 50s, this lake here looked like a field. There was just one little strip of water. When I was before I started ricing, what they call jigging the rice.
Yeah, I've heard that term.
We have a wooden kettle about that big, and it's about that deep. And my dad dug a hole, probably about that deep, just so that kettle will fit. Had leather moccasins. They lace up to about here. And we put heavy socks on. And that was our job.
So you'd walk on the rice?
No, just kind of move your feet like that. It's like knocking. The polar looks for that green, that dark green, moves the canoe all over the place. He's always looking.
So the polar is kind of the scout, kind of moves.
It was better when you could see where the girls were.
So now before you said that the lake looked like a carpet, but now what does it look like now to you?
80% water.
Why do you think it's changed so much?
Today the people don't make offerings. The medicine man would make the offering of the rice before anybody would take a bite, and after they made the offering, then we'd have a good feast. Man, I still remember that. Many different varieties. They even had some people even brought, which was really good, white rice and raisins. That was good.
So people don't necessarily do that anymore.
They don't do that hardly anymore. But I think that's probably what my spiritual explanation of the lake because they say, well, if they don't want to give us back, then we'll take it.
Boys Fort Outdoor is produced by Kbft with support from the Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund. You are listening to KBFT's Boys Fort Veterans Series, a special Veterans Day series featuring stories from the Anishinaabe men and women of the Boys Fort Reservation who served in the United States military.
My name is Fred Mcdougall. I'm a Boys Fort band member, Navy veteran. I joined the Navy in 1960. I served until 1964. I was stationed on an aircraft carrier out of Boston, the USS Wasp, CVS-18. I actually was what they call a helmsman, and I actually steered that aircraft when we were at sea. That was interesting. We played mostly war games with submarines and things like that. And our aircraft carrier was an anti-submarine warfare aircraft carrier, and we were always patrolling looking for subs. I was also on a 5-inch 38 gun mount, which is a large gun mount. While I was on there, I have to say I really enjoyed it. Seeing a lot of things. Launching aircraft is something that a lot of people don't get to see, and recovering aircraft and being up on the flight deck was probably the most dangerous place in the world. If you didn't keep your head on straight, you could die real quick up there because there was so much going on all the time. The most memorable thing that I did while I was on the Wasp, and we were out of Boston, so most people could remember or should remember the Cuban Crisis. If anybody recalls what that was that's when Khrushchev and Castro got together and cooked up a plan to put intercontinental ballistic missiles in Cuba. We found out because our U-2 flights picked up what was going on in Cuba. By that time, he was pretty anti-United States and pro-Russia. Once the evidence was found by the president, the White House, they monitored for a long time, and they seen the missile bases being built and the silos being built and everything. And then Kennedy came on TV and said, enough of this stuff. These missiles can't be in this hemisphere. What's Cuba, 90 miles off of the coast of the United States? These missiles were capable of hitting any city in the United States of America, just something that the United States could not tolerate. So Kennedy ordered a blockade. And, of course, being out of Boston, our task group was sent to Cuba. So now I'm down here in Cuba, and that was interesting because almost on a daily basis, I'd see Russian trawlers, and we'd go to general quarters and on the gun mounts, and this wasn't a drill, it was active military strategy, was to load our guns and train them on the trawlers. If I recall, we did it about 4 times, turn back Russian trawlers. You could go out on the deck and look at these Russian trawlers because they were, 500 feet away. You could actually see the missiles on deck that were covered up with tarps. Well, I was down there for 31 days. They finally settled the whole crisis, and the Russians agreed to take the missiles out of Cuba. We came back, and the funny thing about it was we, on that aircraft carrier, outside of what we did to alter the course of the Russians, we had no idea how severe this was. We didn't know how close we came to nuclear war. We were just a bunch of sailors doing our job. I've since seen documentaries on the Cuban Crisis, and it still amazes me how we were ready to invade Cuba. We got it in time that most of the missiles and the silos and the things in Cuba were not ready. They couldn't have responded anyway. So we stopped it. That was my last duty station. I got out in 1964. I'm still active in a way with the VFW. I serve on the Mid-Range Honor Guard. I'm a drummer for the cadence for the funeral march. We shoot rifles. We do a regular military funeral like most people have seen. 21 gun salute, flag folding, taps, and the whole thing. So I've been active in that for quite a few years, and I probably will be till I can't do it anymore. But I know people appreciate veterans. Veterans Day is special to the Honor Guard because, we have a lot of activities that involve paying tribute to our fallen comrades. And we say that a lot. Our band of brothers, whether they're still with us or gone. And Veterans Day is an important day, at least to me, and it should be for the rest of the country. And it's getting so it is. In fact, it's more important to the country today than I can ever recall in the back. From Ira Hayes, all the way up to, what we have today in the military. Why Indian people served disproportionately? I think it was just more than being an American. This is their land. It probably means a hell of a lot more to an American Indian, and I'm sure it does, and I know it does. The Mother Earth here, the land where our ancestors are buried, means a lot more to Indian people than just being in the military. It wasn't like an immigrant protecting the Constitution of the United States. These people who fought in World War II in any military conflict, all the way from the Civil War on up, had stepped up the way they did, sacrificed what the hell they did, because they've got more invested in this country than just protecting the United States of America. This is their homeland.
Thank you for listening to Boys Fort Veteran Series, brought to you by Kbft 89.9 FM and the Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund.
This is a special segment about Native American film and media for KBFT Radio on the Boys Fort Reservation. Sit back and enjoy the listen.
Charles Holmes, Ned Lake, Minnesota.
Can you tell me a little bit about the films that you saw?
Yeah, it was very good last night. I enjoyed them all. My kids said they were kind of scary, but overall they were really good shows, films.
Is there anything in particular that you noticed about the films?
Well, there's one part in there, like workers going to an elder's house, brought back memories, tears, and one of the workers were helping her singing to the elder, and that just brought tears to my eyes because flashbacks from my daughter doing it to her grandpa. So that was very moving for me. And all the other ones were good, I liked, but they had different language, words for the animals, what we have here, so it was different.
If you were to create a film or make a film, what would it be about? Have you ever thought about that?
No one ever thought about making films, but then that one of them they used Superman. That one, the theme for him. But then I was thinking, if we did make something like that, we should use the natives, the chiefs, or somebody, so it's right in our culture. Mm-hmm. But then this program, it does everybody, so maybe that's why they did it that way. It's just not natives only.
What is your favorite movie of all time?
Well, favorite movies, I like the action, tear-jerkers. I can't think of, right offhand, I don't know what they are. I just know what the scenes, a couple of them are. Oh. Walk in a Cloud might be one. And Powwow, Smoke Signals, I like those ones. And
Dances with Wolves? No, just kidding.
Well, that's on there, yeah. We watched that a few times. I like it. And
is there anything else you want to add about the film festival, about movies in general?
No, I wish I would have been came more frequent if we didn't have different appointments to miss them, because we heard the other ones were really good, and we just dreaded missing it. And I'm glad we got this one in, the last one there, and it was really moving.
Thanks for tuning in to our special series about Native American film. This story was brought to you by the Nett Lake Radio Project and the Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund of Minnesota.
Welcome to Cultural Crossings, a program that highlights the voices of Nett Lake youth.
My name is Anthony Drift. Playing in the snow is awesome and fun. It gets kids exercise and fresh air. I love to play in the snow. I have snowball fights, I sled, I make snowmen, and best of all, I make igloos. Some people are afraid to go outside in the winter, but not me.
Cultural Crossings is produced by the Nett Lake Radio Project with help from In Progress, an organization that works with youth to help them develop their artistic talents. This project is supported by the Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund and the citizens of Minnesota.
You're listening to Native Art Festival, a series produced by Kbft Radio and the Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund. Leah Yellowbird is a painter who's originally from International Falls. She's not just any painter, though. Leah Yellowbird's paintings look like beadwork. She shared her unique style of painting during a class as part of KBFT's Artist Series.
I brought something really simple. I brought a page from an Ojibwe coloring book. The reason why I did that is because I wanted to show how something as simple as this children's coloring book can turn into something that's not so simple. You know, you've got an outline and the rest is creativity of whoever's choosing to do it. And if we have 20 different people here, every painting's going to be different.
How did Leah Yellowbird get the idea for her beadwork painting? She tells KBFT the story of how it all started.
I always did something. I always did something with my hands. I always beaded. But I painted, when I started painting, it was, my dad had passed. And so I took my mom to Arizona for the winter. It was her first winter alone. And so we got this little trailer at this retirement park. And we got there and I brought my kayak and stuff because I love to kayak. And these retirees party like gangsters. And I could not keep up, nor did I want to. And my mom was having a blast and having so much fun. And so I was kayaking during the day. In the evening, my bead time. I didn't bring any beads. So I went to a hobby shop and I bought one of those 24 paint kits, 24 colors, tiny little tubes. And I bought a couple paintbrushes and I bought a roll of canvas. Didn't have a clue what I was doing. And I brought it back to the trailer. No room in this little trailer, they're very small. And I laid it out on the little kitchen dinette table that was in the trailer. And I told my mother, we don't have a table for the rest of the winter. And she said, okay. And I said, I'm going to paint this like I beaded it because I'm missing it, beading so badly.
Because it takes so much time to complete a painting using Leah Yellowbird's style, she coached attendees carefully, explaining small details and techniques, like paint consistency.
I can see how if it's thicker, it'll kind of pop. Or I don't know the word I'm trying
It's a
to
ranch
use.
dressing situation.
Yeah.
And it's hard to describe because paint doesn't come in that consistency.
Yeah.
Class attendees had their work cut out for them. Even a simple design can take a very long time. Leah coached people by sharing that she makes mistakes on each painting and how to fix it.
And I told Leah, there's not one painting that I've ever done that I haven't done that. I've always gone back and reblacked things.
Okay.
Because you make mistakes.
Leah Yellowbird took a big risk to follow the path of an artist, and it certainly paid off for her and the community that shared in her lesson.
What do I have to lose? Well, I think you're putting a I've got nothing to lose. I only have to gain. And they're reaching out for me, these ancestors are, and they're offering me something. Do I take it? Or do I spit in their face? So I took it. I quit the good job and just kind of reset myself. And I just thought, is this something? Can I actually do this? Like, is this... I'm not an artist, am I? And then I decided to stop thinking about it. And just, if the ancestors were allowing me to do it, just go ahead and do it and keep doing it until they stopped. And then it got to the point where I was afraid to stop.
Thank you for listening to Native Art Festival. Brought to you by Kbft 89.9 FM and the Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund.
Bonjour, Dean Shenakas, Nimigun, and Notre-Dame, Wabusation. I grew up here in Nut Lake. I went to the school, the grade school here. I lived with my grandma and Gijik, Dennis Gijik, my cousin. And the other thing I wanted to share tonight too was when I saw the coming of the lights. Because when I was living here on the res with grandma, there were no lights here, no running water, there was no storage, nothing. It was really poor. And a lot of the people here gave. I remember my uncle, we called him Uncle Young, but his name was Ernest Gijik, and he would go hunting, and he would come home with things, food or whatever for grandma. And that's where I learned how to start tanning. I heard the language a lot. I never heard my grandma gossip. I never heard her put down anybody in that lake. Nobody. And that's where I learned that, to be humble. And this is why I chose to go this way. Well, I should say, Achumani chose me. But I've been walking this way since I was 17. The spirits came to me and scared the heck out of me and shook my bed. And I went right into grandma and I said, something's in my room. So as time went on, I found out what my walk was going to be. I began to learn a lot, how to behave, how to listen, how to be respectful, how to have humility. And I did that. And I always gave more than what people gave me. And we gained a lot through that. And now my great-great-grandma, I never thought I'd live this long, but I've carried my spirituality throughout, and I've walked this way. I've had men condemn me, I've had elders condemn me, but this is my walk. And I know, there's a lot of things I know, and a lot of ceremonies I've been taught to do, and even when I was down in the cities, I was down in the cities for 30 years. I went to college down there, and whenever I wanted to have a sweat lodge or go see a spiritual person, I had to travel. And I was raising my 3 children from a divorce. And I traveled all the way from the cities, all the way up to Red Lake, Boys Fort, White Earth. My dad was from White Earth. So I got to know a lot of the spiritual people, being that young. One of the things how I became a drunk, I'm a recovering alcoholic. And how I became was, I have a daughter, her name was Jolene, who passed away. And she was my 3rd child. I'm a good mom. I make Indian swings for all my kids. I made them moccasins, give them Indian names to protect them before they head out in society. When she died of SIDS. And before that, Grandma Gijik and the Mo South ladies and other ones come and told me that I would be doing spiritual things. Because I don't gossip about people. I don't gossip about people, if they're running a ceremony. I don't judge. That's what I was taught. You can't do that. The only one that's holy is the one up there. So that's what I learned. I never talked about anybody. I never got into gossip. And then when I became an alcoholic after my daughter died, and I went to treatment, and this is the part I want a lot of people to understand, is that when I went to treatment, they put people in chemodependency in the nut house, and that's where I went. The CD part was on this side, the nut house was on this side. But the thing was, they didn't know too much about CD then. And so when the CD people, we'd have to go and eat, we'd be in line. Colonization, we had to be in line. And then one day, this black guy came running towards me and he had a knife. And I didn't see that, and one of the other guys pulled me out of the way. But I stayed on because I wanted my sobriety. I wanted to find out how to stay sober. I know how to be sober, but I wanted to stay sober. But the thing was, I still hadn't forgiven the Creator for taking my daughter. And that was a secret thing I kept. And then it festered, and it festered, and it festered. And pretty soon I was on a drunk again. And when I sobered up, I felt so bad, that guilt. So I went and seen a medicine woman, and she was from Red Lake. And she said, you have to deal with that, but you're going to have to go that spiritual way. That's how I started my spiritual journey. And remember, this is my walk. And I would never, ever do anything to hurt anybody. Never. I wouldn't talk about them. I don't want anybody feeling bad because I said bad words. As time went on and I began to heal, I went to sweat lodges. And one of the sweat lodges I was in, I went to Red Lake. I went to Adam Lucia. He was the kindest man I ever met. You know, when I tell him of my daughter, he would allow me to cry and then say, oh, geez, don't be a baby. And out of that came a dream. And in that dream, this lady came to me. And she had something in a buffalo robe. And I didn't want it. I didn't know what it was. And then finally, the fourth night when she came, I finally took it and I said to her, if I don't want this, I'm going to give it back to you. And I opened it up, and it was a pipe. Same pipe I dreamt about. Everything to the color, everything. And I felt her hair on my arms. It was like horsehair. I tell these things because it's the truth, and this is who I am and how I came to be. One of the things with sobriety that I like is that it's like our way of life. You always look at yourself. Always. Today I went out to the ceremony place. I made a dish. I talked to Ojibwe. I told those spirits, money dues, I need your help. Mcdougall, what? I said, my name is Dancing Snow. A wolf named me. I come from the north direction. That's the direction I come from. So it took me, I'd say about 20 years to find out about who I am. 20 years. I've had, even down in cities when I was involved in, I hate to say that, but in politics. I had to be because I was a chair. When I was 28 years old, I was a chair of the board of directors because I opened my big mouth and I wanted to know why our people weren't getting as much as the other people. Why is that? Next thing I know, I'm sitting on the chair of the board of directors. But I fought along a lot of times for my people, for the people. I've been to many ceremonies, different tribes. And one of the things I realized too is that we're all related because we're Indians or whatever you choose to call yourself. Me, I say Anishinaabe. But I walk humbly. I never, even if someone wants to give me some news or something new, news or something, I just listen. You know, I enjoy people. I've learned to love people. I have a lot of friends that from all over Minnesota and the United States and Canada. But it was an honor to do this because I began to think about my walk. And I'm getting ready to do another ceremony. And, but you know, the thing is, the Creator always sent me somebody to come and help me. And I always kept my mind open. That's the key. Don't let that judgment get into your mind. That human side, you know, that sometimes it's good, but... And I always think to myself, how would someone feel if I was mean to them? My dad used to teach my brothers to respect women. He said you came from one. So anyway, these are a lot of the things that I've gone through. And I still walk my walk, even though I hear rumors and stuff, but it makes me stronger because I just have to smile to myself. And I just make another pot of cedar tea. Because that's what keeps me healthy. I almost died last year when I went through the therapy with my thyroid. But all these, I drank Indian medicine. That's all I did. They gave me some other stuff, but I didn't do it. And I've seen other medicine people, and that's what got me through. And so whenever I see an elder, I always try to go by them. When I was younger, I'd go by them and sit by them and go get them coffee. You want a cup of coffee? You want some water? You want some which way you're going? You want, I'd go ask them. That's what my grandma taught me. To respect. You don't have to love the person, but to respect them. There's a lot of power in that for yourself. Miigwech for listening. Kekawabamen. Mirawa. Oh, I know what Kay, I forgot that little joke I was going to say. I have one more thing. I heard this long time ago, I'd say maybe when I was 17, 18, and this elder was talking, and we were closing up because we did a workshop. And he said, well, I want to say a joke, he said. So everybody was like, okay, we want to hear this joke. He said there was 4 gods. You're going on a trip. You're going to go on a vacation. He said, well, where are you going to put your power at, he said. That God was thinking, I'm going to put it in the ocean, where man will never, ever, ever think about going down there. And the other one's looking at him and says, where are you going to put your power? He said, I'm going to put mine up in the mountains. He said, man won't think about going up there. Finally, that other one, he was thinking, he said, well, where are you going to put yours at? I'm going to put it inside man. He'll never think about looking in there. Think about it. See you. Go up a minute.
Welcome to Cultural Crossings, a project that highlights the voices of Net Lake youth.
My name is Abby Rose Zapata. Having a healthy and happy family is the most important thing in the world to me. We spend a lot of time together and laugh as much as we can. We look after each other. We eat together. We play together. We're one happy, needed family.
Cultural Crossings is produced by the Net Lake Radio Project with help from In Progress, an organization that works with youth to help them develop their artistic talents. This project is supported by the Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund and the citizens of Minnesota.
You are listening to Kbft, Minnesota Artist Profiles, a series featuring artists and musicians of Minnesota. Brought to you by Kbft 89.9 FM and the Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund. Delina White is a native apparel fashion designer, jewelry maker, and beadwork artist from the Leech Lake Band of Ojibwe in Minnesota.
Bonjour, Wishishinabeg. Bakabio Sequin de Jenikaz. Makwan in Dudem, Gazagisqua Jamaica Gandunjiba, Anigam Inda. My English name is Delina White, and I live on the Leech Lake Reservation in the traditional village of Onigum. I'm a native apparel fashion designer, indigenous materials jewelry maker, and beadwork artist. I began to make beadwork at the age of 6 years old from my grandmother Maggie King, who was a master beadwork artist, but who would never consider herself that. She was a humble and loving grandmother, and she has had the greatest influence on my life when it comes to philosophy, cultural heritage, all of my teachings, including art and beadwork and my beadwork style. I learned to create functional art, such as apparel and accessories that include moccasins, bags, and garments, using our traditional methods and designs reflective of natural surroundings of the woodlands and the Great Lakes area. I've recently began to specialize in creating my own fabric taken from photographs of the beadwork that I have made. And from the fabric, then I make contemporary style clothing. I believe that my work balances between traditional and contemporary materials and designs, but always based in the foundation of the lifeways of our original people of the Great Lakes and woodland areas. I have jumped the job track in 2014 and was given a major award from the Minnesota State Arts Board to do something with my artwork, and I decided to do a 7-gallery tour of the Great Lakes woodland traditional ribbon skirts. And I did that with my 2 daughters, Lavender and Sage, and since 2018 I have been working as a solo artist, designing and sewing apparel and accessories that includes indigenous materials, jewelry, bags, and scarves mainly.
Have you received any awards?
I have received several awards. The first one that I received was a Bush Foundation Fellowship for Traditional Functional Art for my beadwork. And that one was quite moving because it was the first large award that I had ever received, and my mother had recently passed away, and I was kind of sad that she wasn't able to be here in the physical world to enjoy that recognition with me. Most recently, I've received several awards from the Jerome Foundation, from the United States Artists Fellowship, from the Art Place, from the Five Wings Arts Council, the Native Arts and Cultures Foundation, and a Master Award too from the Five Wings Arts Council. I'm really proud of those achievements.
What are some of the challenges you see being an artist?
And I think that with all artists, that we are our biggest critics. It's really hard for me to make decisions on different colors and different styles, what design to use, what to add and what to take out, because everything I think is so beautiful, and about the color combinations and fabrics and textures. And so I know now that why when you see fashion designers coming out with the collection that they all kind of look very similar, but there's a little bit things that are different. And I'm thinking that's because they couldn't make up their mind either. That they thought, oh, this looks nice, let's go ahead and do that. Oh, and then this looks nice, so let's do that too. So it's about doing everything that comes to your mind in your creative process. So that's one of the greatest challenges, is to stop second guessing myself and just, produce the things that make me happy. It takes up a lot of time to make a decision. So I work very well under pressure because I'm like, I got a deadline to meet. I'm just going to go ahead and do this and let's make it work. Another thing I think is pricing your artwork. And that is just kind of trial and error kind of thing. Start someplace, see how it works, see, if you're selling to the level that you need to sell to cover your expenses, which is what we all hope to do. And there's 2 pricing strategies I've learned. One of them is to price low and sell a whole lot of it. Another one is to price high and sell just very little of it. So it's up to you on how you want to put your artwork out there and how you want it to be perceived. So that's another challenge is pricing, and that just kind of takes some time to check out the market and see, how it works. Another one is, how do we pay ourselves for the services when we're doing service type of art? And that would be like a musician, or for me, it's styling, it's putting together a photo shoot, it's doing a production. It's those types of service things that it's like, okay, how do I decide how I'm going to pay myself? I know that as artists, we really find it rewarding to do and work within the area, the genre, the field, the medium, and the art that we create, the final product. It's like, it was such a challenge for me. It was grueling. It was really, blood, sweat, and tears to get this done. But now that I'm done, I can really step back and kind of appreciate what I've put into it. And hopefully we can do that, because I know that it's hard for me a lot of times to really appreciate my work. It's like, I don't like it, but we'll see where it goes. So that's a challenge. How do we pay ourselves? And it's really difficult for us, I know, as artists to actually sell our work and to sell our skills and our expertise, because, as Native people, we want to give everything away too.
Where can we find you and your art?
You can find me on Facebook, and I'm under my name, Delina White. You can look at my website. It is IamAnishinaabe.com. And I would really, really love it if you would follow me on Instagram. And you can look me up under my name, Delina White, or you can go directly to my page at Anishinaabe Kwe Neen.
Is there anything you'd like to say to future artists?
What I want to say is just to encourage the community, because I know that we have so many artists in our community, whether they be technical artists for lighting and staging and producing music, being musicians and being filmmakers, being models and designers. We have so many people who are sewing their own clothes now and making beautiful skirts for themselves to wear on a daily basis and for special occasions, is to really hone in on your work and to do outstanding creative things that you have in your mind, and to just take the risk and do it. And if you're considering starting a business with your art, I really encourage you to do that. And the most important thing is to just get started. Start your process about finding which genre fits best for you, and to work on your original creative ideas. Yeah, the most important thing is to get started. It's so scary. It's a risk to put your work out into the public because you don't know how it's going to be received, but I can tell you that somebody is going to love it. You're going to get your naysayers and people who don't like the work that you do, but that's okay, because we all have our different likes and dislikes and our different opinions, and we just keep going forward with the things that make us happy.
Is there anything else you would like to add?
Some words of encouragement is to just be kind to one another. And I know that we all are, so I just want to give you praise for being who you are as an individual, and to take time out for yourself, to take care of yourself. And I want to say miigwech for listening to me today, and keep listening to Kbft Radio. We're so honored and privileged to be able to have our own radio station. Miigwech Bizendawieg.
Thank you for listening to Minnesota Artist Profiles, brought to you by Kbft and the Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund.
This is Native Fashion, a KBFT series about the tradition of regalia making and the people who do it. You look very beautiful. Well, first tell me your name and tell me where you're from.
My name is Ashley Goodsky. I'm here. I'm a member of the Boys Fort Reservation.
And tell me a little bit about the regalia making that you do, and what your specialty is, and how you got into it, and maybe who taught you.
I wouldn't say I have a specialty. I just kind of go with the flow. I kind of started beading when I was very young, and I learned from my grandma Arlene, who has been making regalia and beading items for as long as I could remember. So I just she showed me like how to work the needle, and I just kind of went from there. So,
what do you like to make?
Well, I think I kind of took a liking to beading. I had hand sewn my son's first regalia, traditional regalia, when he was like 4, and I saw it in a dream. I saw my grandma showed me. She laid it out, and my grandma has been passed away for since 2009. And I had a dream that she showed me this regalia for my son, and so that's kind of where I got the motivation to continue making what I had seen. So, and then he wore it when I finished it, and everything that I did just kind of came together. So,
tell me what it looked like, the regalia that you made for your son.
The flowers, I guess, were. See, the colors that were in there were black, like yellow fringe, yellow flowers, white flowers, blue, and then green. The yellow was what brought everything out the most. That's what I enjoyed the most, and my son loved it because he saw me make it, and he was there with me the whole time. I had him helping me measure things. I had him pick out colors. I had him feel things, and I just kind of helped me envision how I saw him wearing it. So I really didn't know what I was making until after I got done handling the objects and watching the expressions on his face and what he liked and what he didn't like. I guess I didn't have a plan. I just really went with it.
That's really, I think that's really what strikes me about regalia making, is that it's a really personal process. I mean, you're making something that you just said it was in a dream, and then your son was touching the materials, and that's a really beautiful, I think that's a really beautiful way to make something for somebody to wear.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it was funny too because I went through 3 sewing machines, and finally I had to just sew it by hand. And that was the only way I completed it, was by hand sewing it. I couldn't use sewing machines. Like, my machines broke down where I couldn't use them. So finally I just started sewing by hand, and that's just really how it all came together. Well, now he grew out of it, so I passed it down to my nephew, who is just now starting to walk. So I was able to resize it. Yeah, I was still good enough to where I could resize it and just reuse the beaded design. So my nephew, who is now coming into their circle, he can wear it now.
Beautiful. And have you made any other regalia for any of the other family members or for yourself?
Well, no, like right now I am making a T-shaped pattern dress for my daughter, who is just now starting to walk. I haven't really sewn like that with a sewing machine, so this is definitely my first time beading or sewing that kind of technique anyways. So it takes patience, and like I said, I don't know what I'm doing, so I really am going with the flow, and you can see it in my work. But they say practice takes perfect, so I just got to keep going along and just be proud of what I'm making. I'm not embarrassed by all. They say nothing's perfect, so that's what I go with.
Great. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Native Fashion is produced by the Nett Lake Radio Project and the Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund.
Welcome to Historical Window, a program that lets you experience the past and treasure the history of the Boys Fort Band of Ojibwe through the voices and experiences of our elders.
dad's name was William Smith. I remember him in 1954. He was a woodsman for Shooty. He used to go to work at Shooty's. I was the oldest of 6 kids. My mom, she was from Tower. And I remember we used to have to stay home, and my grandpa and grandma would take care of us. Those were hard days growing up here, but we made it. I mean, we survived that kind of stuff. I remember about JFK and then.
The assassination?
Yeah.
What do you remember about that?
I was in the Biwabic High School, and they'd come over that intercom thing, and we were in gym class, and everybody was crying out in the halls, and I was wondering what was going on, and they said the president was shot. I liked him because of what he was doing for us and stuff.
What do you remember about the Beatles arriving?
I don't remember when they arrived either, but I liked their music and stuff because at that time I was in a foster home, and we couldn't do this rock and roll stuff because we grew up in a church. They didn't like it. Said it was bad, and I don't know, them foster homes, they didn't let us do nothing but make us work. I actually grew up on a farm, on the farms. And I was wishing that my dad didn't die that time. We all sent away in the foster homes after he passed. He drowned in that little lake over there by Pat Doyle. I was only 10, and I still remember that. All alcohol-related stuff. Well, before us kids left Net Lake, I remember watching. My first television was at Bronson Vice, because I used to go play with Patsy. She'd say, "Let's go watch cartoons." On what? Or they had a black and white television, and we'd get stuck to that TV, and Bronk would chase us out, "Go play." But that was something, because we never had that down here. We had kerosene lamps and no radio. So where I grew up at, we couldn't get into that stuff.
Where was the foster home? Was that by Wabick?
By Wabick. It was called that Christian home there, Storybook Lodge. I was there for, about 8 years. Me and my sister Lucille. And then Marge Day and Irene Day, religious stuff. I never forgot my Indian, what I learned here. My grandpa and grandma would always talk Indian to us. I still remember to understand, but I can't talk it.
What about the start of the Vietnam War? What do you remember about that?
I just remember stuff like from in school. When I come home for visits here, friends and stuff, Mavis and Mattel. Yeah, Ike and Mike and them are in the service. They went to Vietnam, and then I'd have a lot of questions like, well, how long are they gone? And it's weird the way I grew up. So I encourage my kids now to try to learn about their culture and stuff. And I'm glad they didn't have to go foster homes and stuff. Take care, themselves and stuff. Don't go through what I went through and all this stuff. I was scared when we went on that trip. First time I went on a plane, I was so scared. But turned out.
Made it back, huh?
Yeah.
What do you remember about 1969?
1969, that was when my son was born, Donnie.
A good year then, huh?
Oh yeah, my second son.
Were you in the village here then?
Yeah, we lived over in where Bronkenby used to live.
What was it like around then?
It was different from when I used to live here.
Somebody had mentioned them bringing in electricity and water. Was that around that time or was that before?
Well, when I was growing up, we never had water and stuff or television and all that stuff.
Do you anything stick out in your mind in the community of a historical event that changed things here? What do you think made a big impact on the community?
That brand new school. I see the kids now are smarter. The ones that went into OR and then now they're more educated and stuff.
How do you feel like when they paved the roads, all the roads used to be dirt and paved the roads, do you think that had any impact on the community?
Oh yeah. Then the street lights. It used to be pitch black around here. Years ago. I made sure I was inside after dark. Because one time I was going to, so they had a little outhouse, and there was Callie, the one they called Callie. She was standing right there by the toilet. Oh, scared me. I went screaming inside, and I think I scared that horse, and he went the other way back home. That would be a treat when my dad would come home from work on a weekend. Go down here and shop. Get some pies.
A weekend treat?
Mm-hmm.
That's good. What kind of pie was your favorite?
Apple.
Historical Window is a production of Kbft and the Net Lake Radio Project. This program is made possible by the Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund and the citizens of Minnesota.
This is Native Fashion, a Kbft series about the tradition of regalia making and the people who do it. Tell me your name and tell me where you're from.
Roberta Reibel, I'm from Leech Lake.
And tell me, now you have these incredible earrings. I am a huge admirer of earrings. And in fact, a couple of years ago, I started not buying earrings from Target or anywhere else. I only buy them from the people that make them. And tell me who made your earrings and can you describe them for me?
My mom made my earrings, and she also makes all my kids' regalia. They go on the powwow circuit, and they go dancing. They go in the competitions as well as the traditional powwows. And there are certain ways that each usually elders that teach us that do the beadwork and beadings, but I don't actually do them myself. But the ones I'm wearing in particular, they're black and white, and they have the rhinestone banding. She actually has a whole lot of friends all over that do sell the stuff to make. And she comes up with her own creations.
How long has she been? She's sitting right here. Tell me how long she's been making earrings or beading.
I would say for years. For years. She's, I don't know, it actually depends on the person too. Some do sell their beadwork for profit, some don't. And she is actually one that doesn't really sell it for profit. She actually does gift them if she needs to, and for family members and close friends, things like that.
And who taught your mom how to bead?
I actually don't know. That would be her question, I guess. She watched her mom do it and picked up and learned. And she has friends that do it as well. And they share kind of some of their designs and things. And there's or tutorials. There's actually no certain way it is to be done. Everybody has their own way of doing it. So that's what makes them so unique.
Yeah, and is yours kind of a modern style beadwork?
Yep, there's actually all different types of beadwork. And you can use bugle beads. There's the smaller beads. Depends on how they're cut and everything like that. There's different sizes, so it depends on I guess the preference of the person who's wearing them.
Yeah. Well, they look beautiful on you.
Thank you.
Well, thanks, ladies.
Thank you.
Native Fashion is produced by the Net Lake Radio Project and the Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund. This is Native Fashion, a KBFT series about the tradition of regalia making and the people who do it.
Bonjour, I'm Michelle Reed from Lac du Flambeau, Wisconsin, and I live in Upper Michigan. Started sewing and beading when I was about 7, and then about maybe 15 years ago I started doing more like machine sewing, and from there I learned a lot about applique, about pattern making, and different outfit stuff.
Who taught you how to do regalia?
My mom taught us how to sew and bead, and then my younger sister Summer actually taught me how to make applique and dance outfits with, all on the sewing machine.
You were an instructor here for the Net Lake regalia making classes. Can you just tell us what projects you helped with?
Tonight we actually did a basic applique class, and everybody made their own medallions. In the last couple of days we also did pattern making for moccasins, leggings. We did a couple of jingle dress patterns.
How many years have you been instructing?
I've been instructing for about 35 years. When we were growing up, our mom did a lot of classes, all different types of stuff. So all 4 of us kids would go and help her teach the classes. So that's how I learned, and she still does some classes. And one of my sisters does college level outfit making classes, and then my other sister does women's groups where she teaches. So all of us do that type of work. I'd say my favorite thing about teaching is, just like what I love about outfit making, is actually seeing when the product is done. The excitement of, the people who are making the items, and then when they actually see the finished product and realize how easy it really is to do that, they actually were able to make something. Yeah, that's probably the most exciting thing for me.
How many outfits do you figure you've made?
I could not even say. Honestly, I have no idea. Definitely hundreds, but I couldn't tell you how many.
Now, your outfit is just amazing. Like, it's like beautiful, like beyond words. Can you talk a little bit about your outfit?
I have many outfits. I have about 15 outfits, but I'd say my favorite beadwork is definitely my floral contemporary beadwork. And my sister, who taught me how to sew, is the one who started that original design. She drew and painted the florals for me and gave me that set for Christmas, and then I took it from there and started beading those florals. I decided to go with like a faded fire colored background, because most beadwork is, has a simple single color background, and that's what my other sets are. But for this one, I just wanted to do something totally different, totally, contemporary, stand out, and that's what I came up with. So right now, I'm actually in the process of having a friend of mine bead a matching one for my daughter.
Yeah, you're very busy doing regalia. And what else do you do?
I also do native dance fitness, which is a way to get in shape and also learn like powwow dances, learn the stops. A lot of people say that there's no other way to build your endurance for powwow dancing besides powwow dancing, and I really believe that's true. A lot of people, they run, they lift, they do a lot of other things, but until you dance those song after song and practice that way, you won't know how good your endurance is. And of course, kids especially, they really need that. Whether they're dancers or not, they really need a fun way to get in shape and something, that they're excited about doing. Something else I do is my dance troupe, which is Woodland Sky. We include powwow stories, and also, some storytelling through the different dances that we do.
And you also do shows with Brûlé.
Oh, yes, I also dance with Brûlé, which is definitely an amazing thing that I started doing a couple of years ago. Brûlé is very well known for their music. It's not powwow music, but it definitely has an amazing story behind it. So when I dance with them, I definitely love the the way it speaks to all people, not just Native people. So it's been an opportunity to travel and I think bring our culture to many people. The biggest advice I can give to people who want to do this full time is to take a business class, learn about business, because art is an amazing way to pay the bills, but you have to know how to make the money, not just make the product. So that's definitely my advice for upcoming outfit makers.
Thanks for coming up here and sharing your knowledge with the community. Miigwech.
Miigwech. It's been an honor.
Native Fashion is produced by the Nett Lake Radio Project and the Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund. This is Native Fashion, a Kbft series about the tradition of regalia making and the people who do it.
My name is Terry Goodsky. I'm here from I'm actually from here from Boys Fort, and I'm one of the MCs this weekend.
Great. Tell me a little now. You are wearing this really beautiful medallion. I'm wondering if you can describe it for me and tell me if you made it, how you made it, and if you didn't make it, tell me who made it for you and what their technique was.
Well, the person that made this is Crystal Pagel from Cass Lake. I don't have the patience to do this kind of work, and I never will claim to be. So she's the one that made it, and this is actually a caricature of the bad guy of the Avengers movies, Spider-Man movies, Hulk movies, Thor movies. This is going to be the ultimate bad guy. But I heard that you just put on 3 and double loop it, and then put on another 3 and double loop that, and another 3 and double loop that.
Now, why this character?
Well, I've actually invested in this character. This character has been around for like maybe 20, 30 years. And I actually have the first issue. I had the first issue where he was first into comics, like maybe 25 years ago. So I'm a fan.
So it's kind of like your avatar.
Yes, he's a bad guy, and everybody likes bad guys.
Now, why do you wear medallions? Tell me, because I noticed there's been a steady trend of a lot of men wearing necklaces, and that seems to be in Native culture, like that's very prominent and acceptable and even expected in some ways.
Well, sometimes it's to kind of let people know. It used to be we'd wear our clans. So at one time it used to be like you'd wear your clan on your medallion or your necklace. And that way they kind of tell people which clan you were from, because Ojibwe custom, you don't marry someone within your own clan. So you'd want to pick somebody from a different clan, and they would marry into your clan.
So it's kind of like saying, hey, I'm available.
Well, I'm not available, but it used to be that. So, yeah.
Okay, so now tell me a little bit about what it takes to become an MC at a powwow, because that's also a very particular talent.
Well, it's they actually threw me to the wolves one time. I've been.
How long ago was that?
I've been an MC for about 5 years now. I've been a singer for powwows for about 30 years now. We want to try to charge, or, give the next generation. The elders kind of said, well, he does a good job, and he's respectable, and he's, so they said, well, let's give him a shot. They gave me a shot, and I had good mentors like George Strong.
You do an announcement for me, like in your powwow MC voice.
Me. You. All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's get the ball rolling here. It's grand entry time here in 25 minutes. So let's all right, host drum, where are you at? All right, head staff, where you at? Where's our eagle flags at? Where's our colors at? Head dancers, you know your role. Arena director, let's get to it.
Nice. Great. Well, is there anything else you'd like to add?
Well, just I always have fun when I come here to Boys Fort, and they trust me with the mic, so it's pretty cool to come back to your own res and be the MC, and the same thing with Lake Vermilion. I actually grew up over there, but I'm from here because it's 2 parts of the reservation. But yeah, they trust me with the mic, and I'm honored that they ask me to come back every year.
Great. Thank you so much, Terry.
All right, cool.
Native Fashion is produced by the Nett Lake Radio Project and the Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund.
You are listening to KBFT, Minnesota Artist Profiles, a series featuring artists and musicians of Minnesota, brought to you by KBFT 89.9 FM and the Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund. Today we meet with Jonathan Thunder, a painter and digital media artist from the Red Lake Band of Ojibwe in Minnesota.
Bonjour, my name is Jonathan Thunder. I'm originally from the Red Lake Nation, and I grew up in the Twin Cities, and I now currently live and work in Duluth, Minnesota. I work primarily as a visual artist. My main focuses are filmmaking, painting, and illustration. My mediums vary from project to project. Throughout a typical year, I work with galleries, museums, other artists, public art organizations, film festivals, and TV producers. I work in the digital world quite a bit. An example of that would be my most recent project was to design 4 digital billboards that are displaying along Hennepin Avenue in Minneapolis. The billboards were commissioned by the Hennepin Theater Trust and Native American Community Development Institute. Both of those organizations commonly initiate and oversee public art installations amongst many other awesome things. I themed the billboards to represent the indigenous community as it is currently in the Twin Cities region and all over, really. The billboards are part of a 2-year project that will carry the message of we are still here, we being indigenous tribal communities. I'm also showing bodies of paintings at the Mcdougall Museum of Art, at the Grand Valley State University Art Gallery, the Kruk Gallery in Superior, Wisconsin, and the Joseph Neese Gallery in downtown Duluth. I also work with an organization in Central Hillside called ACO, where you can find some prints of my work. Recently, in the last few years, I got into installations. The installations are a mix of animated imagery and sound design displayed in a gallery space with physical objects that support the concept or story that I'm sharing with the viewer. An example would be my installation at the Tweed Museum in Duluth, where I animated and projected 3 Ojibwe legends onto a large glass display case, which created sort of an aquarium effect with the animated world living inside the aquarium. This type of animated imagery that was featured in this exhibit is something I developed while jumping back and forth from canvas painting to making short films. I thought it would be interesting to make sort of a digital canvas that acted somewhat like a story or short film, or a glimpse of a story, or like a peek inside of a vignette or a happening. Overall, if you look at my paintings, if you look at my animations and digital illustrations, I like to keep the common thread of storytelling. And the story I like to tell ultimately is my own story, as I see the world and I see indigenous events happening and unfolding in real time and in modern times. In '99, I went to school in Santa Fe, New Mexico to study painting at the Institute of American Indian Arts. After that, I moved back to Minneapolis and studied animation and visual effects in 2002. During my time there as a student, I started my exhibiting career around Minneapolis just by walking around with a bag full of bad photographs of my paintings and just trying to meet anybody who I thought might maybe show my work. And during that time, I also got one of my first mural gigs, which was in St. Paul at the American Indian Magnet School. And I graduated in 2005 and went to work for a video production house on 15th and Nicollet. While I was there, I worked as the lead animation artist, making commercials for television and streaming the web. After work, I would go home and work on my own projects and enter those into exhibits and film screenings and just try to promote my own business and my own work. It was like working two jobs as an artist. One was for them and one was for me. And in 2011, I parted ways with the company and began my independent career as an artist and filmmaker. And I have been doing that ever since. Recently, I was given an international award for visual artists from the Pollock Krasner Foundation in New York, New York. That award came at the beginning of 2020, right before the pandemic started. And I felt pretty blessed to get that. It helped me out in a lot of ways. My main influences come from life as I see it. I see life as being pretty surreal at times, so that irony and dark comedy tend to come through in my imagery and stories. One of the things I would have to say to any artist just starting out or someone who is interested in the arts as a career would be to stay true to your voice, but find what that voice is through education and take some training or mentorship in the art form that you want to pursue. And find your community, whether that's writers or filmmakers, painters, sculptors, musicians. One of the greatest challenges of being an artist for me was putting myself out there. My first exhibit was very intimidating, and so was the second. But I learned to make it work, and that meant shaking a lot of hands and talking to a lot of people I didn't know and talking to them about what my work is about. I would say the greatest reward of being an artist for me is the community that comes with it. Through my art, I'm able to tell my story and my stories that people from my community can relate to. I use my art to frame tribal perspective, language, and concepts that make me an active member of my tribe. And it's quite the gift. During this year of the pandemic, I've had probably the same challenges that most others have had. Although I did find quite a bit of time to spend in the studio, the exhibit and film festival scene changed. So, like other artists, I was adapting to an all virtual or online format. I had to buy a couple things like a mic and a ring light. My studio's private, so there was no trouble staying home and staying safe, as they say. My parents are both in their late 60s, so I spent a lot of time worrying about them. Then in November, they both caught the coronavirus, and it was pretty scary, but they pulled through, and that was probably one of the hardest times of this year for me. I think it was pretty great to see through all of this how creative anybody and everybody can be by finding ways to continue to showcase films, exhibits, and support the arts, including all the artists I watch step up their online game and meet the pandemic challenges in the best way possible. A good place to check out what I'm up to is on my website at thunderfineart.com. I keep it pretty up to speed, although right now I'm having some kind of trouble with the menu on mobile formats. I'm not sure why, but I'll figure it out. From there, I have links to my Instagram, Etsy, and galleries you can find me at. Yeah, I hope all the listeners keep your heads up, and I know this year has been tough for everyone, but you're not doing it alone. Miigwech for inviting me on for this interview on Kbft. I always appreciate your support of Indigenous artists from all over Indian country. So Miigwech, Gigawabamin, Minawa.
Thank you for listening to Minnesota Artist Profiles, brought to you by Kbft and the Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund. You're listening to a series about outdoor activities from ricing to survival skills from a boys' fort perspective.
My name is Marybelle Isham. I am an elder here from the reservation. I was born here up in Hattie Brown's house. Grew up as a child here. There was 14 of us.
So you grew up here in Nett Lake, and tell me a little bit about what it was like growing up here and some of the things that you did and the things that you did with your family and that sort of thing.
Well, what I remember of growing up is that being from a large family and not having a father that worked steady because of the seasonal work around here.
What was the seasonal work?
He worked in the woods. He did some, they call it jippoing.
What is it called? What is it?
Jippoing. They cut logs and pull them out. He had a team of horses. So we all had to help at one time or another. My job was to feed these horses every morning. So that's how we grew up. It's kind of like, it was a hard working. We were a hard working family.
So one of the reasons why I wanted to talk to you was about ricing here in Nett Lake, and just about Kurt and I talked about talking to people who had a ricing camp or were in a ricing camp or does ricing, and so I wanted to ask you a little bit about that and what that was like, whether you did that with your family or several families, and maybe talk me through what your role was, or I don't know anything about harvesting rice or what's involved, like from start to finish. What would y'all do?
Well, my ricing experience started when I was 10 or 11, and my brother was a year older, and my dad said it's time for us to propel the boat while he knocked the rice. And I was sitting in the front, my brother was in the back to steer his boat and to push from the back, and I was to paddle from the front. So that started us pretty young, and he kept us out there mostly all day. I used to cry while I was paddling.
How come? Why?
It's hard work.
Yeah, hard on your arms.
Oh, it's hard on everything, and the bugs and the heat. But that was the beginning of my ricing. As I grew older, I had my own partner. I decided I'm going to try to knock the rice, and I found that I was real good at it. I got a lot of rice. Well, you have to have some rhythm. My daughter, I went with her, and I was going to pole her, and she had no rhythm at all to get the rice. I said, "You're not a knocker, right? You're not a knocker, so you'll have to be a poler."
What does the poler do?
You stand in the back of the boat. You have a long pole with the duckbill on the end, or else a fork, where you push on that and go as far as you can, as long as your pole is pushing, so the knocker has an even ride along the rice as she knocks or he knocks. And the more faster you are at getting each side, and how clean of a picker you are, that's another. You can't hit it too hard or you knock the head right off. Not there to ripen anymore.
And so what would happen when the boat would be full?
Then it's time to come in and put it in sacks.
So how long would you be out there for typically?
Maybe start about 9 o'clock and go till about 3 or 4 in the afternoon. We would take the finished product. At that time, we only got a few dollars a pound, but we would get so much off this lake. We could make money at it. And it would be, we'd be eating plentiful during the rice harvest time, and we could be taken to town, and our parents would bring us, get us school clothes. We never had school, nice new clothes like that, during the year. And so it was a happy time. When the harvest was done, we'd have the money to go and do things.
What's it like now, ricing? Do you go out now, or?
I don't go anymore because of arthritis. It's still in my blood to be with anything to do with harvesting. The biggest part of this for me right now is I am a prayer person, and I do a lot of praying for the lake, for the well-being of a good harvest. So they have the hand-parched rice being done up out here, and I was a fire keeper out there to help keep fire as they parch the rice. But that got to be too much. It's just a lot of work. So now I'm kind of go around testing the rice.
Boys Fort Outdoor is produced by Kbft with support from the Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund. Welcome to Boys Fort 90. Boys Fort history in 90 seconds. The Minnesota Chippewa tribe flag was created in 1934 because of the Reorganization Act. All 7 tribes in Minnesota utilized this flag. When the different tribes became established, it was necessary for each to have a flag of their own. The director of the Boys Fort Reservation at the time, Fred Mcdougall, set up a community contest to design a seal for the band. Unfortunately, no one participated, and Mcdougall went on to create it himself, recognizing the great importance to represent the tribe for years to come. In the middle of the flag lies the Boys Fort seal. There's a circle. In the circle, there are 4 directions, making 4 quadrants. In the upper left quarter, there are trees, representing what the name Boys Fort means, strong woods. The lower left quarter is brown, which represents the Mother Earth. In the upper right quadrant represents our sacred Spirit Island on Net Lake. In the lower right quadrant is blue and has waves representing the lakes of Boys Fort. In the top half of the seal you can see 2 spirit ducks flying in the sky. That is to represent the most common wildlife found in Net Lake. Directly in the middle there's a huge green rice stalk, and that is what Net Lake is known for. It's wild rice. Beyond the stalk of rice is an orange sun in a raising or setting position. Mcdougall tried to include everything that represented the Anishinaabe people and the land of the reservation. The Boys Fort Band officially adopted the seal and the flag in a council meeting in the 1970s. The seal and the flag is still utilized today and proudly represents the Boys Fort Band of Chippewa. Boys Fort 90 is produced by Kbft Radio and the Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund.
You're listening to Native Art Festival, a series produced by Kbft Radio and the Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund.
Bonjour, my name is Phillip Savage. I'm from the Fond du Lac Reservation, and I'm here on Net Lake today to demonstrate some birch bark craft work.
Phillip's many years of experience as an artist made it easy for community members to participate and take home something truly beautiful.
This is a lot easier than I thought it was going to be. They're simple to make, but they look really complicated.
I've been doing birch bark art, 30 years, ever since I was a little kid, picking up little pieces, watching my dad. He was a sweetgrass basket maker, and he would use a lot of birch bark making his baskets. So watching him, I just kind of picked up along the way and kind of, developed my own style and my own niche. And I do a lot of spring bark etching. I make earrings, I make baseball hats, top hats, I make wall hangings, necklaces, anything.
I'm going to have to come down for that.
Yeah, those are really cool. You could sell those, I think. Somebody would buy those.
I like how they turned out.
Community members didn't just take home birch bark crafts. They also left with shared knowledge from artist Phillip Savage on how and when to harvest birch bark so that it's ideal for the project they might have in mind.
Well, we'll talk about harvesting the bark, and it depends on when you harvest your bark within the year to what you can do with it. So birch bark's very versatile, and depending on the time of year, it's kind of hard to get off the tree when it's cold out. But if it's in summertime, it'll pop right off the tree when it's hot enough. I like to harvest winter bark and spring bark because it leaves a layer that you can etch into. But I like it in summer bark too. That's great for baskets, canoes.
Even those familiar with birch bark crafts were surprised by Phil's unique style, which showcases the versatility and accessibility for community members to make things from a traditional medium.
My favorite part was working, making designs out of birch bark, because I never did that. The only thing I ever did was make baskets, and I never tried. And this is interesting to see all the different designs, you know, how many other stuff you can be making out of birch bark, how different ways you can use the birch bark. And but that's the first time I ever did this, and I really enjoyed it.
It's not just a craft that people learn with artist Phillip Savage. He shares a little traditional knowledge about other things Anishinaabe people traditionally make from birch bark.
Birch bark's a pretty versatile medium, and there's lots of projects you could do with it, from arts and crafts to, you know, making lodges to live in.
Like about the class.
I loved it. I've never seen this done before, so it's interesting that you can actually take a tree and do something like that with it.
Yeah, you can make art without really having to go to the store and buy materials.
Yeah, it's beautiful. It's beautiful.
This event is the first in a series of upcoming events as restrictions due to the COVID-19 pandemic are gradually lifted. Attendees were glad to be out and about, talking, laughing, and sharing stories while learning a new skill.
Yeah, because I wanted to do this last year, but then the whole COVID thing hit. And
It's a free event, you know. It's kid friendly. You can bring the kids down. It's a good little family event, you know. Coming together and working on culture is just really good, and really enriching for families and young people.
Fun.
Are you gonna come to the next KBFT event?
Hopefully.
You can find out more about upcoming artists in the Native Art Festival by checking out KBFT on social media and online at kbft.org. Thank you for listening to Native Art Festival, brought to you by KBFT 89.9 FM and the Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund.
You're listening to a series about outdoor activities from ricing to survival skills from a boys fort perspective. Interviewing Karen Drift, can you tell us a little bit about growing up here, how important winter is to the Mother Earth?
We had to be outside all the time during the winter. Like, we'd go down by the lake and we'd take shovels or whatever and make a skating rink. We went sliding. We had a big called Sox's Hill, but we didn't have no sled. We used to use old paper boxes, but we did all kinds of things. And we'd just go around playing outside sometime well, they never let us make a snowman because that was against our religion. They told us if we did make something like that, we had to tear it down before dark. But we did all that. We'd make like igloos and just found things to do outdoors in the winter.
You did a storytelling, a traditional Anishinaabe storytelling for the KBFT outdoor event tonight. Can you tell us how important storytelling it is?
Well, a long time ago, they call that Atsuke. That's storytelling in the winter. But the elders would tell stories to their own kids or whoever, and they not only storytelling, they do like teachings and sewing, and then plus my grandpa and grandma would tell stories to all of us kids. And it's really important that we do that just to bring back a lot of stuff that the kids some of them don't even know about what we used to do years and years ago. And But yeah, my grandpa would tell us about a lot of medicines that he did.
No, you said you're related to John Bear Grease. Is dog sledding part of the Anishinaabe culture?
They would haul for us. Like they'd haul all that ice water up from the lake. How the dog is the Indian's best friend, helping the Indian, and they used them in ceremonies.
You talked about the Spirit Island here in Net Lake a little bit at your storytelling. Can you tell us the importance of the lake? Or not the lake, but the island.
I was told that the island is a very spiritual place. Even the lake, the water in the lake. There's a large snake that people see once in a while. It comes from the front of Spirit Island and then goes all the way, I suppose, down the rivers. And nobody can stay on that island a night. A lot of times when we do ceremonies, we take food out to the island, and we sometimes we even take a ribbon shirt out there, small. They say whoever's guarding that island is little small men, and there's a lot of writings on the rocks there. And one year they try to send a crew out there to go and clean it. And she told them, no, don't go out there. Don't, just leave it the way it is. There's somebody taking care of that island. And each time we go to the island there to either feast it or something, and we put a shirt there or something, blanket maybe. And that's just to show them, the spirits there, that there is somebody still caring for them yet. And we got to teach our to keep that up when we're gone.
Boys Fort Outdoor is produced by Kbft with support from the Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund.
You're listening to Native Writers Fest, a series that features Native literary talent from Minnesota and beyond.
Wewenep in the Mokoma. KBFT. I was just like a rock star. Just kidding. Bonjour, Kanan and Magana Takoma. Wewenep is in the Muk. KBFT is in the Kate 89.9 FM on your dial.
Ron Kanutsky is a stand-up comedian from Thunder Bay, Ontario. He hails from the Red Rock Band of Ojibwe at Lake Helen. His inspiration to get into comedy went back to his public school days. He wanted to mix rock and roll with comedy.
And one of the guys that I really looked up to came along. His name was Sam Kinison. And he's the one who developed that and took it over the top. And I remember my friend saying, you came up with that. You actually talked about that. And I said, yeah, but that man delivered it.
Sam Kinison wasn't the only influence. He remembers a friend pulling out a beta tape of another famous comedian.
Really school. Yeah, my friend says, come over here. And it was really weird because we closed the curtains and we went inside and he locked the door because we didn't want any adults coming in. I was like, what's going on here? What are you going to put on? I had no idea what he was going to share with me. And we watched Eddie Murphy Delirious. And I was like, man, I haven't seen anything like that. I said, I want to do that for a living.
He told his dad he wanted to be a comedian, but didn't receive the words of encouragement he was hoping for. So he put that dream aside for a while. It wasn't until he turned 40 that he started working with people and found his purpose. And he still had a passion to play music and do comedy. And that's when he entered a comedy competition. He got second place.
When the comedy opportunity popped up again, I heard of these competitions that were happening in town. I heard it on the radio, and I drove to the radio station and I signed up. And as soon as I did that, I got scared right away. I was like, I don't know if I can do this. I don't know if my dad told me I can't do this. It's not possible, So I got really scared about this. And so I went in this competition. I was citywide, and I got second place. And I felt like I failed. And there was a guy from Chicago. His name was John Caponera. He came up to me and he said, I don't know how they judge here, son. He said, but you're number one in my books. He goes, he said, this is subjective. He said, but you're funny. He said, you said stuff that I have never heard before. You're not stealing anyone's material. And he says, that guy that won, he ain't going to be back. He's never going to go into this. He said, you got the taste for this. He says, you want more. He says, you'll be back. You'll win this. And he says, the question is, what are you going to do after that?
He won the competition the following year. In Thunder Bay, he said he was the king of comedy.
Standing up here, like right here, there's a tan. This is under here. Oh, it's just really white. I am so white.
Kanutsky isn't sure what the future holds. He says he doesn't want comedy to become a burden. He wants it to remain fun.
And it's just about living the moment and having having an experience. And as long as you're having a good time doing it, that's all that matters. That's for me, anyways. I'm not shooting for anything. I know in the beginning I thought, I have to get on TV. I have to get on this show. And I started to have I woke up out of fairy tale land that some of these places ain't as big as they claim to be. Everybody's striving to get to this place or that place in New York City or Los Angeles, and it's just another place.
Kanutsky worked really hard to get where he is today. His words of advice to others who want to get into comedy: you don't have to go the traditional route of open mics and small nightclubs to be successful. You can do it yourself. Ron said he built his own shows, and people came.
What I did is I created my own shows, and then I hired other comedians in the community of Thunder Bay that I thought were funny. I built my own bills, and I made my own shows. And I skipped that nightclub begging for a show. I said, that's like a bar band kind of thing. I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. Not get paid for my craft, giving it away for free, and keep being told you're going to get exposure. I've been exposed to many things, weather, particularly in the north. I don't need any more exposure.
For KBFT, I'm Allison Herrera. Native Writers Fest is a production of the Nut Lake Radio Project and is supported by the Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund.
You're listening to KBFT's Virtual Music Fest, a live virtual music series brought to you by KBFT and the Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund.
They were with Superior Siren, an eerie folk project from Duluth, Minnesota. Music is inspired by Lake Superior and siren mythology and combines alluring vocals with mesmerizing blend of strings and percussion. Superior Siren is led by singer-songwriter, guitarist Laura Sellner. Back in 2016, the band released their first full-length self-titled album and is releasing an EP in May. Yeah, welcome, Laura. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me. It's an honor.
This whole Superior Siren mystique is really cool. Can you just tell us where you got the idea and the inspiration?
Yeah, well, I am born and raised in Duluth, Minnesota, and so I've lived next to Lake Superior my whole life and have always had a connection to water, and I attribute that to being a Pisces and always going to the beach with my mom growing up and loving to swim and loving the water. And so I definitely have this feeling of being like a mermaid. And when I wanted to start creating music, I wanted to create something that was a little creepy and different and maybe made people uncomfortable, but also was alluring and poignant. And so the siren mythology really fit that theme, and I wanted to make a connection to place, and so chose Superior Siren for Lake Superior.
Yeah, that's great. And speak about alluring, your voice is really alluring. That's what really stands out with your music. You have this really unique and powerful voice.
And thank you for saying those kind things.
How have you guys been dealing with this pandemic?
Well, it definitely has been hard. It's been hard for everyone. For me personally, it definitely was stifling, and kind of all the directions that I was going in my life were halted, and it made me question, I think it made all musicians question what a career in music would look like. But I feel like we just had to find ways to maneuver through it and create new ways to make music. And thankfully, like I was saying with the music video, there's still things to do behind the scenes until it's safe to perform out in public. And we are all, me and the band members, are still very committed to the project and are taking small steps to move it forward. So it's been challenging, but I feel like we're coming around and we're booking some outdoor shows this summer. So I'm very excited to start performing again with an audience.
Yeah, there's definitely a light at the end of the tunnel. I think the shows are going to open up to like more outdoor shows this summer. And then who knows after that again. But anyways, how many albums have you released? You have 2 albums out and an EP coming?
Yeah, so I started Speak Your Siren as a solo project, and so I released a solo EP back in 2014, and that was just kind of a way to record what I was writing. I didn't really have much intention behind it. I was just kind of getting going with the whole project, but that got a good local response. And then after finalizing the band and getting all those ladies together, we started working on the full length, and I wanted to do a bigger project, do CDs and vinyl. And then I took songs from that solo EP and recreated them with the band, and we released that. And that was a great experience. Most of the projects that I do are funded through grants, mostly through the Arrowhead Regional Arts Council. So I'm very grateful for funding in Minnesota because it has allowed us to do what we want to do. And so we released that album, toured it, and learned a lot from that experience. And so I have this plan to kind of consecutively release a solo EP followed by a full length. And so I'm releasing this solo EP on May 7th, and I'm really excited about that. And then that kind of allows for us to work on the next full length. And so it's my way of like getting music out there and keeping listeners engaged and continuing to create while we prepare for the next full length album.
Cool. Congratulations on your upcoming releases, and we really look forward to that. We at Kbft have been playing your stuff on our station now for a while, so we're supporting you 100%. Be sure to watch the full interview and performance on KBFT's Facebook page and YouTube channel by simply searching for KBFT. Thank you for listening to KBFT's Virtual Music Fest, brought to you by KBFT and the Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund. You are listening to KBFT's Boys Fort Veterans Series, a special Veterans Day series featuring stories from the Anishinaabe men and women of the Boys Fort Reservation who served in the United States military.
My name is Gene Goodsky, and my native name is Detigiguneb, which means a northern harrier, English name of a hawk. As I was 17, I joined the Navy hoping to get into the Seabees. 14 years honorable of military service. I was discharged as the E6, which is a first-class petty officer and the equivalence to a staff sergeant. I had 4 good conduct medals. My first orders, Vietnam. Well, I went over there and could have got killed about 5 or 6 times. I was with a unit, a CB team. There was only 80 men in that unit. And in a battalion there's 800. What they used to call that, the CB teams, is the elite force of the Seabees. So I was fortunate to get picked into one of them teams. And we used to go out to these Marine camps out about 40, 50 clicks away, kilometers from the main base. We'd load up all of our equipment in a little caravan. We'd go out to the camps, and they were really glad to see us coming. As the equipment operators, we had about 4 bulldozers, D8s, and guys, the equipment operators would push all that perimeter back about 200-300 yards. They'd make a big mound all the way around their camp. Some of the equipment operators that were backhoes, they'd dig trenches all the way around their camp, and they'd put the sand on the top so they'd have cover. Every once in a while they make a little break all the way around, and they put concertina wire on the other side of and on the top. But at night when they get attacked, Charlies they call them, the enemy, he'd get these big wide boards like a 2x12. He'd put it over the top, they'd run up on the top, they'd carry another 2x12 with them and drop it down, and they'd run across, and before they hit the ground the Marines would shoot them. Nobody hit the ground live, and we were right behind them. There we were firing ourselves. That's why the Marines were so glad to see us, because we were able to build that big mound over there. Illumination, because they'd attacked at night, and they'd shoot up the illumination flares. It's just like daylight. They always had half the force, on guard duty, watching the place. Then when they get under attack, the siren would go off, and everybody would run out and grab their weapons and go to the lines. That one particular morning when me and my two friends were coming from the morning breakfast, morning chow we call it. They were about an arm length away from me on both sides, walking. Then pretty soon you can hear that whistling sound. And about that time the siren went off, which meant incoming. We're being attacked by rockets. And one landed about 100 yards from us, and it exploded, and you could just hear the metal ripping. And as soon as the metal was ripping and burst out, they'd all shoot forward. And my two friends, they each took 2 pieces of shrapnel, gut shot. And we all buckled over and hit the ground. I laid there for about 5 minutes until the siren went off. And I got up, and my friends didn't get up. There was about 40 guys laying down, and there was about 20 of us standing. And we started hollering for the medics. And the ambulance came racing across the runway. They took us all in to get us checked. They didn't find any marks on me, but they took my 2 friends away. And the next morning I went back to the hospital to check to see how they're doing. And when I got over admitting, they said, "No, we don't have anybody here by that name." So they must have got killed. 2 shrapnels in each one of them, because otherwise they would have been there. I never seen them again. And I made it through. I served 12 months over there. I got over there in country, they call it in country, December 10th, 1968. And I left January 10th, 1970. I went to the bar, wait for family. And while I was sitting there, these 2 long-haired guys come up to me. They said, "Where are you coming from?" That was before I went and changed clothes. I went and stopped and had a beer, and I said, "I'm coming from Vietnam." And they looked at me, they said, "What the H were you doing over there?" I said, "You know something? I went over there to keep you free. That's why you're free today, because I put my life on the line for people like you." And they left. But that's the kind of greeting, the first greeting that I got from when I got to Minnesota. They know they got me mad. And after that, I went and changed clothes. And after that, family came, and we put our lives on the line to keep us free. We had a lot of faith in our tobacco, eagle feathers, hawk feathers. Yeah, every time I see a veteran, no matter who they are, Vietnam, Korea, whether they're Marine, Army, Air Force, they're a veteran, I walk up to them and I shake their hand. I just tell them, "Welcome home. Mio." That's all.
Thank you for listening to Boys Fort Veteran Series, brought to you by KBFT 89.9 FM and the Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund. You're listening to Anishinaabe, Ogima, Boys Fort leaders from the present to the past.
My name is Kevin Lisi. I was born in Minneapolis and moved to Bemidji after, in the 90s and late 90s, I moved to Lake Vermilion. I believe in our culture, and I believe that everyone has a time to do what they're supposed to do in the time that they're supposed to do it. I think that during my time, there was a need for an infrastructure. Today, I can look back and see that we have a very large government center that is going to stand there, not 10 years, not 20 years, but stand there for 100 years. I've been in gaming since before gaming was legalized here in the state of Minnesota. There was an opportunity here at Boys Fort at Fortune Bay Resort Casino for a blackjack manager. I applied for that, was lucky enough to receive that position. So I moved here in 1996. And as we moved on, I went into and applied for the position of public relations. That really opened my eyes into dealing with the other aspects outside of the gaming world. It really opened my eyes to the threats and really how fragile of an infrastructure that Indian gaming has within the state of Minnesota and federally. And there's always that threat of expansion by the state, expansion of gaming, and threats of competition. That kind of inspired me. Maybe I can help out. Maybe I can do some things, expand my horizons at the same time, work for the people of Boys Fort in a different capacity. So I decided to run for tribal chairman. And gaming is vital to tribes all across the country. Although the federal government has a responsibility, a trust responsibility to help the tribes with infrastructure, healthcare, housing, education, it's never fully funded. That is met with gaming dollars. So I think if I have to look back at some kind of legacy, it's the growth. And we've had the most expansive economic growth in Boys Fort's history, and that was done by our community. You know, we created partnerships. We created partnerships with our local county commissioners, with the state of Minnesota. The challenges today are more modern challenges. We face challenges just like the non-native community faces. I mean, we have challenges today of continued alcohol and drug abuse and opiate abuse and those things that creep into our communities that mainstream America is facing. Closer to home, we have to face the challenges here of our economy, because the economy of the outside world, the economy of our neighbors today affects us here at Boys Fort. And as we've struggled and tried to create an economic cycle here at Boys Fort by not only being solely dependent on gaming, but trying to branch out and build a portfolio of businesses. Our biggest generator of that portfolio that holds everything up and above is the Y Store convenience store, which is located conveniently on highways 169 and 77. But, you know, people have to realize that, you know, we are in the Iron Range area. This is one of the most turbulent economies here in the state of Minnesota. It's very difficult for business to survive. In fact, the state of Minnesota has what's called the IRRB, and they receive state fundings and tax dollars from payment in lieu of taxes for taconite taxes. They get funded huge amounts of money, you know, to create economic development. And I'd like to say that Boys Fort has done well overall in this economy, in this area, for our neighbors and for ourselves. The tribal leader that I looked up to was John Gijek, who was one of our tribal leaders and also a relative of mine. My mother was a Gijek, and you know, I had an opportunity to tour with the elders, Lake Kabetogama forest area, And I saw an area which has grown over, but the area where my grandmother was born. And she was born in a traditional way out in the Kbft forest. But they also talked about the families that lived out there, you know, the Wooden Frogs, the Whiteman family, you know, our family, and everyone out there. And you could almost have a sense of what it was like at that time. Those are the people that I look up to. But in a modern day sense, when I first was elected chairman, I guess I looked at, one, what is the closest Indian nation similar to ours that has the best growth? I'm a big believer in don't reinvent the wheel. I looked around and have been familiar with Chief Philip Martin from the Choctaw of Mississippi. I brought our council and some of our commissioners down there to see how they operate. You know, a new elementary school going up. They had new housing going up. And I said, I like to set goals. And I was like, this is what we need to accomplish. This is what we need to set our mind to doing. And, you know, looking back over 12 years, I can say that, you know, we did what we were here to do. There will be challenges. I just hope that, you know, the people see the challenges that any tribal leader has, and that it's not an easy task. You talked about, you know, what it was like for a past leader and what it's like today for a modern leader. You know, we are still a close family, but the modern day politics is made sometimes negative on a federal level, is even more condensed sometimes on a tribal level because we are so close. But we can do better. We can remember those people and honor those families, honor our elders by having disagreements, but having them in a positive way so that everyone benefits in the future for Boys Fort.
Anishinaabe Ogima was brought to you by the Net Lake Radio Project and by the Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund.
Welcome to Historical Window, a program that lets you experience the past and treasure the history of the Boys Fort Band of Ojibwe through the voices and experiences of our elders.
Lorraine Villebrun. I've lived most of my life on the reservation. I moved off twice but came back. And worked here all my life. I worked first for the Operation Mainstream program, then secretary for the RTC, and then I worked 5 years for the community Kamad building. See, I forgot to mention that Kamad's coming in here too, helping people. And then at the school for 26 years. So I worked most of my life here. And the Beatles came in with a blast, and kids were always all talking about them and watching them on Bandstand and TV, different programs on TV. I remember some of the channels that my parents used to watch now.
What was it about the Beatles? Was it the sound or their...
I liked their music and the rhythm of their music, because it was good to dance to.
Did you guys follow their haircuts? Or?
Some of them did, but not too many.
It's more about the sound and...
More or less, yeah. They liked the music and the sound. Anything that was good to dance to, that's what they played a lot.
So you watched them on Bandstand. The dances you had mentioned before, was that the kind of music they would play at the dances?
Yep, that and waltzes. Mostly fast dances. They liked those twist dances. And they danced almost every dance at them teenage dances. Those were fun.
The JFK assassination.
JFK really hit a lot of people hard because everybody liked him, and then when that happened, it was a shock, because, you know, who would do such a thing to a president? And my mom always said it had to be somebody crazy to do something like that. There was a lot we didn't know about the people off the res, though. We had to kind of guess what was going on.
Kind of sheltered here.
Yeah, very sheltered, which was nice. Because when, you know, kids could walk around the village back and forth, play here and there, and never had to worry about somebody stealing them or grabbing them and hauling them away. Because every time a strange car came into town, the officer that was here would go and stop them and ask them what they wanted. And this was the end of the road, so they might as well go back where they came from. And so our kids were, the whole village was like a big family. Everybody watched each other's kids when they were out and about. It was kind of nice.
What do you remember about the atomic bomb?
Yeah, I remember them talking about that a lot. Because my dad said they had bombs of some kind in where he was at in some other country. He was serving his service when he was in the, I think he was in the army. And he was telling us kids about those bombs and how scary they are. And that's what I was telling you about, all those planes flying over the village around that time. And we thought we were going to get bombed. That was scary.
Like the world shook?
Yeah, it's like the whole earth just quivered. So they had to be big planes to cause that vibration field. But that was the one and only time we ever seen them. There was 2 or 3 maybe here and there, but not like that.
First time television.
That was kind of exciting. We went from that old battery-operated radio to a TV. So our poor old radio just got pushed aside. But it was fun when we had it. It was fascinating to see people doing stuff, and we could see them. Like the different channels my mom and I used to watch, or programs, was that fights, boxing matches, and the different music shows. They used to watch Lawrence Welk. When he was on TV, Lawrence Welk, and there was another we used to watch, the kids used to watch Bandstand, Sesame Street. There was 2 or 3 of them, but we watched that one where they were teaching us letters and numbers. They were even teaching kind of basic math and subtraction. It was kind of interesting. We were all pretty good in math when we got to school.
Rock and roll.
Rock and roll was just about as good as the Beatles and stuff coming on. I think Elvis Presley's the one that got that going, and we all liked his music. So there was a lot of Elvis Presley songs played at our dances and stuff, along with the Beatles. Yeah, there was a big reaction. The people tried to get him off TV. They said that wasn't appropriate dancing for children. But we didn't dance like him. We did our own dance, but we liked his music. None of them jiggled their legs and all that kind of stuff the way he did, but we all liked his music, so we did our own dance.
Well, okay, with rock and roll, the day the music died, Big Bopper and Buddy Holly.
Oh yeah, that was, everyone was really felt bad about that. They were shocked at how quick they left us. But Buddy Holly, he was another good rock and roll singer.
With his big glasses?
Yeah, big thick glasses. But he was famous for his singing and his glasses.
Start of the Vietnam War.
Yeah, I remember all the talk and the fear of that. And that's just when my brother Chan went in, and we didn't want him to go. But he had gone in before it started. And then as soon as he got done with his boot camp and got ready to go in with his group somewhere, they sent him to Vietnam. And we were really worried about him there. Thank God he did come home, but he really told us some horror stories too about those people, just like my dad did about the Jews. And he told some horror stories about being. It wasn't like that all the time, but you never knew when they were going to strike.
The Manson murders.
Yeah, those were totally unbelievable. Most of the people here couldn't imagine somebody doing that to somebody else. And then come on the TV, act like they didn't do nothing. But there was a lot of talk about that. Then I always thought to myself, I was glad I lived on a reservation. We don't have to worry about people doing that kind of stuff.
1969.
1969 was a good year, I think. I remember. I think that's when I first started working. And that's where they were doing a lot of, what would you say, revamping the whole village. And they were building houses at that time. Because Tiny was working on that housing, working at a housing program, Namakin, I think they called it.
Okay.
And that they were here for a couple of years and got those houses all built.
Wounded Knee Uprising.
I thought it was a shame that they were on them people's reservations, bothering them. Like they took enough away from the Indians as it was. Why don't you, leave them alone and let them live their lives? People started wondering if they were going to start bothering us again too, because we were dark-skinned.
Talked about before, having a big impact on the village. You had mentioned bringing electricity in.
Oh, yeah. And it was really nice because before they had electricity, we had no light. It was just, at night, it was black, dark, unless there was a full moon. And then that's only, once or twice a month when it's big enough to shine. So when they did get electricity, the more the people that got it, the brighter the village looked, because each time somebody got electricity, they had a yard light. And I think that was one of the biggest things. We still had people coming, and people wanting to see the reservation. And they'd come to the Net Lake, and us kids would be walking on a road. And they'd say, "Where are all the Indians?" We'd look at them. "What's an Indian?"
Historical Window is a production of Kbft and the Net Lake Radio Project. This program is made possible by the Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund and the citizens.
You're listening to The Unexplained, a series on the strange occurrences that have been witnessed or have happened on the Bois Forte Reservation. Brought to you by KBFT, 89.9 FM, and the Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund. Danielle Paradas is a Net Lake resident. She works the night shift, and periodically she'll step outside to enjoy a cigarette while waiting for the hours to go by. One night, she said she saw what looked like a UFO right in front of her.
Okay, bonjour, this is Danny Paradas. I live on the Lake Vermilion Reservation. Chaz asked me to tell a ghost story. It's not exactly about ghosts, but it is about a UFO sighting. I was working late for the housing department on a Sunday. I think I had a deadline that Monday for something I had to get done. And so the government center is right next to Net Lake, of course, and Spirit Island out there. And anyways, when I do work late, I smoke, so I went outside to go have a cigarette, and up in the sky, it looked like there was a plane coming kind of towards the government center from across the lake. There were lots of clouds, and so when I was coming through the clouds, I'm like, that's a really low-flying plane late at night. It was just weird, so I was just watching it, and then it stopped right almost as soon as it was kind of breaking through more of the clouds, and like very, very close in terms of like how close it was to the ground. Well, anyways, it was just stopped and it was hovering, and then all of a sudden I could see more of like its structure, and it was more of a triangle shape. I know UFOs are thought to be like saucers, but this one was a triangle, and I just stared at it just like whoa, and it started moving like I don't even know how to describe it, like clockwise, not spinning like a saucer, but it was spinning like vertically, like up and down. And as it was spinning around in the sky, it started shooting red beams of light that went through the air pretty fast and would just kind of dissipate in kind of all directions. And I was just staring at this, and I had 2 boys at home down on Pineview East with a babysitter. I called the babysitter to make sure I was not going crazy, that there was something. When she answered, I said, hey, can you look towards Net Lake? Tell me what you see. Is there anything in the sky? And she goes, oh my God, what is that? And I said I didn't know. And we both kind of just stayed on the phone together, talking about what it could have been. We're like, UFO. After the phone call, I was done with my cigarette. I put the cigarette out. I head back in to get my work done. It was still there. I come back out about an hour later. It is still in the sky. I drive home, get inside. My babysitter goes home. We stare at it, and yeah, never quite figured out what exactly it was other than a UFO. I started Googling like spinning, flying objects or whatever. But I never really found anything exactly like what I had seen. All right, that is my spooky ghost / pseudoscience Halloween story.
The Unexplained is brought to you by Kbft 89.9 FM and the Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund.
Bonjour. Beba Wewitong Indishinikas. Shaganashamoin Donald L. Chosa. Zagakwantago in Iniwag Ishgonigan in Dunjaba. Onao Oshki Debabjamoinug. Minwa Adzukanug. Gi Debajamoag. Ojibwe Debajamo in Iniwag. Miigwech Bisindao Gi Debajamoad. Hello, my name is Wolves Howling All Around You, or Donald Chosa. I'm from the Boys Fort Reservation. These are some contemporary and traditional Anishinaabeg stories told by Ojibwe storytellers.
One of the ones is I remember hearing my grandma telling me stories about the hairy men that live out at that island, Spirit Island. Somebody went out and they were setting nets. Somebody seen somebody out there, 2 people out there in a canoe, taking the stuff from the people's nets that they set. So they got in a canoe to try and chase them down. They went in, they chased them out to Spirit Island. And on the north side of the Spirit Island, if you've ever been out there, the rock is split. There's like a big gorge like that there. Basically, when you get out there, you'll see it. She said that when they chased them things, the hairy men went in that rock, like it opened up. A doorway opened up and they went in there. She said then the ones that were chasing them tried to do the same thing. And they hit the rocks. And they said the ones that were chasing them could hear them inside the rocks laughing and talking in the Indian language, saying that they thought they could do that too, basically. They thought they could do that. Years ago, probably like maybe 2000, 2001, when I was into running, really into jogging and running, I was coming back around a lake, running around a lakeshore here, got over by Girls Landing. I was getting closer more towards Albert's Landing. And I could see, I thought it was sweat getting in my eyes. And I seen one of those things, those hairy men. And he was crouched down like this, and he was looking out towards the lake. And when I looked at it, I remember seeing his leg. It must have been at least probably that long, meaning that it was tall. I remember wiping the sweat from my eyes. I thought I was seeing things. I remember wiping the sweat away, and I looked. And I got closer. And when I started getting closer, when I was running, he turned and looked at me. And his face was hairy. And he had like a little, you know how a dog's nose looks? It's black and it's kind of like wet like. That's how that thing's nose looked. And when I got closer, it disappeared. I went seeing Gene right away, and I told him what I saw. And he told me, he said, well, go put a dish there. What are you seeing? I put some tobacco down and put a dish there. So that's what I did. And since then, I have not seen that spirit, that being, whatever that is. Another one, too, is when my grandmother, she said she was a young girl. She had an older sister, and if I can remember correctly, her older sister's name was Sadie. They used to have a boarding school over on Vermilion. They took her sister Sadie over there and placed her in a boarding school. Somehow, word got back to my grandmother, her dad, that they're coming to get my grandma Jessie. She was a little young girl, like maybe younger than these little girls here. They're coming back to get her. My grandmother said her dad took her out to Big Island and hid her out there for 4 nights and 4 days. And he'd go out and check on her, though. He'd always go out there and check on her. And she said that she remembered she was really scared. Being so small like that, being so young, being out there, left out there on a big island. Her sister wasn't as fortunate as she was, because she had to go through the pain and suffering of going through the boarding school. And where I'm going with that is that, we as Indian people, look where we're at. Our language, we're my Auntie Karen, I'm attending that class, trying to bring the language back, trying to hang on to the language. Back then, before the Europeans came here, there was only one type of Indian, traditional. We didn't have last names like Drift. We didn't have first names like Shane. We didn't have blood quantums. We didn't have enrollments. We didn't have allotments. We didn't have this to disenroll you, disenrollment. We didn't have that type of stuff here. That was forced upon us. That was given to us, forced upon us by the dominant society. What we had back then, as I understand it, listening to my grandmother, is that we had a shaming tradition. And that was where if a person did something bad enough, the elders or the clan or the band could shame that person. And if that didn't work, then they could banish them. And banish them for like maybe 4 seasons, which would be 1 year or more. But they wouldn't banish them indefinitely. It's good that, I feel good that we're doing this. Like we're trying to preserve all these stories, these teachings. Because someday, our kids are going to say, well, why don't you tell me this story? Why don't you tell me that story? How did we come to live here in that lake, Boys Fort? I remember Ken told me that story about the war over by Geen Hill. My grandmother used to tell me the stories about the Sioux battles. I remember hearing that as a young boy. And the story about the flood. Billy touched on that. I remember my grandmother telling me about the story about that. It was they were on a turtle after the flood happened. And they were trying to get one of the animals to go down and go get some dirt to bring it back up so they could make land again. But the animals tried. Even they said the duck tried. A duck tried, and he couldn't get all the way down to the bottom. Came back up, empty-handed, basically. The muskrat, I do believe, was the one that went down. They said the animals waited for a long time. That muskrat was gone. He dove, and then finally, when he came back up, he was dead. But they opened up his little hand, and he had dirt in his little hand. And that's how the land was basically, as I remember, if I can remember that correctly, that's how the land came back. That's how we got the land back. And that's my understanding of the flood story. Another one, too, is regarding the drift drum. This teaching comes from Rosemary Behrens, is that we must pass on the stories behind the drum, how it came to be here. How I got the drift drum, how I became the keeper of it, was that back in the late 80s, we had some unfortunate violence happen here. And the original, the keeper of it was one of my cousins, and she ended up going away, and it was determined that my grandmother, Margaret Jessie Drift, would be the keeper of that drum. But before that actually happened, before it was actually passed over to her, I remember that the house, I think it's where Kurt Goodsky lives now, that house, there was eagle feathers, there's an eagle bustle in there, a fan, the drift drum, and somebody tried to burn that house down. I remember that morning, it was like, 5 o'clock that morning. I remember sitting there, I was watching TV. I remember seeing a little girl come running by, and I looked up, and it was my cousin Farah. And I went over there, and I opened up the door, and I could tell she was just wild-eyed, and she said, "Dance house is on fire." So I got on my shoes and stuff. I went running over there. How the house sits like this. Front door is right here. The back door back here. In the back bedroom is where the fire was started. I remember Jerome and Clara were there. My Auntie Karen and my Uncle Lester were there. And then I come running in, and I looked up, and I remember seeing the flames in that bedroom. I don't know what came over me, how I knew what to do, but I went running back around the corner of the house, turned on the water spigot, turned it on, and I grabbed the garden hose. Went running back over. I remember throwing that window, or tearing off that screen, throwing that window open, climbing up on top of a tire, and I started squirting water in there. And to me, I think it was a spirit or spirits, or maybe the spirit of that drum, that directed me to do that. Because I was able to save the drum, and I think it was the bustle, I think that was saved, but I think the eagle fan wasn't. It was scorched, and also saved the house. So then they determined that the drum should go to my grandma, Margaret Drift. She became the keeper of the drum, the drift drum. Then after she passed away in 1999, May of 1999, I didn't want to be the keeper of that drum. I tried to give it. I wanted either my Uncle Lester or my Auntie Myra to be the keeper of it, because I didn't want to keep it. It's like I knew that was a big responsibility. And they both said, "No, it should stay with you." So that's how I became the keeper of it. And the songs to that, to the drift drum is Ogichita, Awiya, Anishka, Inguja, Bushka, Agama King Bimoseya. What that means is how it was explained to me is that I'm going to be walking around overseas, but not for nothing. That song was part of a special ceremony for people going into the service and going off to war. And everybody that went through that ceremony and heard that song, as I understand it, came back alive. So I just wanted to share that and make sure that's recorded and passed on. I do tell my kids this story, but I just want other people to know that just because it's the drift drum and I'm the keeper of it doesn't mean that it's mine. It belongs to this community.
What is your name and where are you from?
My name is Shane, and I'm from Nut Lake.
What originally got you into storytelling?
Well, I was raised by my grandmother, and I used to remember her telling me stories, and sometimes she'd only tell me certain stories during the wintertime when the ground was frozen. And some of them stories, they just stuck with me, and they have different meanings to different people. It could mean one thing for me, and it could have a different meaning for you or anybody else. It doesn't have just one meaning.
Mm-hmm. Okay, what do you view as like the significance of storytelling in Anishinaabe culture?
To me, storytelling, what it does for me, it's family time. It's also keeping up with the tradition of storytelling and carrying on that tradition. And also, like I said, they have various teachings and meanings within that story. And then, when it's passed down, it's passed down from one generation to the next. And then it kind of opens up different teachings and different meanings for other generations behind us. And to me, it's just part of who we are as Indian people. It needs to be carried on, and it should be carried on. And I've been telling my kids various stories from Nut Lake to the animals to even some from our own family, the Strongs are descendants from the John Bear Grease, stuff like that.
Okay, like the stories that you tell, the stories that you share, where do they come from?
Mostly, my stories came from my grandmother, and them stories came from her mother, and then her grandmother. So she carried on that tradition, so they just kept getting handed down. One story I can remember offhand